my friend. My name is PEtrovick, and for the past 25 years, I've been teaching, coaching, and training people how to create a better quality of life, primarily through the home-based business profession. I live a life and lifestyle today that most people could only dream about. My worst days are better than most people's best days. It hasn't always been that way. I've had lots of ups and downs, and what I've come to realize is that success and prosperity has a lot to do with our philosophies, how we think, how we act, our behaviors. And I believe that most people, most of the time, need to reach out sometimes and get counsel and advice from people who have created success. They have become the person that they want to become. I've created this series, and the series is called Prosperity and the Mentors. Now, my whole intention behind this is to interview some world-class leaders in our profession and take you behind the curtain, if you will, and figure out how do they think, how do they act, how do they process when they got stuck or weren't accomplishing their goals. And my belief, and I know this for a fact, is that you're going to learn a ton about not only behaviors, philosophies, choices, and habits, but you're going to learn how to create more prosperity and more abundance for yourself and your family. Now, my guest today believes that everybody can live the life of their dreams. You might have a hard time believing that, but when you hear this gentleman, you're going to know with every fiber of his being that he can do it. Why? Well, he actually went from being bankrupt to creating a multi-million-dollar business and being a multi-million-dollar earner. He's been featured in Success from Home magazine six times, believe it or not. He's been interviewed by Grant Cardone. He's been interviewed by Eric Worre, a $1 million interview. He's built massive teams all over the world doing hundreds of millions of dollars in sales. My guest today has a massive heart. He's a servant, and he's so passionate about helping the everyday person create a better quality of life and success so that they can be, do, and have everything that they want. Who am I talking about? Well, of course, I'm talking about Darin Kidd. Darin, thanks so much for being here today, man.
Yeah, I appreciate having me, Terry. For a second, all those things you were saying, I was like, man, he must have invited someone else. That's not me.
Well, take our listeners and our viewers a little bit behind the curtain and share a little bit about that background story, if you would, Darin.
All right. Yes. And first of all, I appreciate you doing this. I know it's awesome that you're giving value to everyone that, these days, lack of education, there's really no excuse because you have the internet where you can jump on there and watch interviews like this. And that's really smart for all of you that are watching. Let me just commend you, because why would you spend your entire life trying to figure out what to do right when you can jump on an interview, you can read a book, and someone else spent their entire life trying to figure out what to do right, and then you kind of shave years off your learning curve. And so thank you for having me. My story. People definitely, once they hear my story, they go, Darin Kidd can do it, I can do it, and it's so true. And it's not just, people say that, but I think my heart comes through, and when I say it, like I really do mean that, because what happened with me is I live in a small town. I still live in the small town that I was born and raised in Virginia. I think we're up to 5 traffic lights at this point. We have, I think it's 1,500 people in our actual town. And if you go out in the county, maybe 10,000, and that's miles and miles and miles away. And I made it through high school. It's a wonder I made it through high school. I made it through a year and a half of college. People talk about walking at college. I walked completely out after a year and a half and didn't know what I wanted to do. I got involved in the home-based business world, and I had a lot of desire, but I really didn't know what to do. And so for 7 years, I failed from 18 to 25, and we ended up bankrupt. So my wife and I now have 5 kids from 25 to 10. And I always tell people you have to be careful when you work from home. That can happen. You can have a bunch of kids, right? Especially if you live out in the middle of nowhere. And what happened was when the 20-year-old was born, we were on government assistance, Medicaid, applying for food stamps. I'm a college dropout. My wife's a college dropout. I was depressed. Went to the doctor for depression when you can't feed your kids, can't support your wife, can't keep a job, couldn't make it through college. No one believed that I was going to have any success, including myself. But I was very fortunate to have some people that came into my life that looked at me not as how I was, but how I could be with my God-given potential. And that little bit of hope continued me on the path to where I am today. And so that's kind of my background, where I was. And looking back, and let me just say this real quick too, so I don't fail to mention this. When I was going through those challenges, if anyone would have said, man, this is one of the best things that ever happened to you. It's awesome. You can't feed your kids and support your wife. And it's awesome. They repossessed your car and you're bankrupt. You're on Medicaid. I probably wouldn't have taken it too well. But now looking back, it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because it's not the easy times that make us grow. We don't grow in easy times. And we can use them as a stumbling block or a building block. They can make us bitter or they can make us better. And so it was my attitude at that point was, I'm not just going to go through it. I want to grow through it. And looking back, it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. And unfortunately, we all have friends and family that sometimes won't participate in their own rescue, right? You throw them the life jacket, they won't even grab it. And sometimes it just doesn't hurt bad enough. So for everyone watching, that burning desire and getting to the point in your life going, you know what? And maybe you're not in that type of situation, but the situation you go, I've had it. I know I'm meant to do more, have more, and be more with my potential. And I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Some people get to that point, and then they have to get to that point. It's like the farmer that had the dog laying under the porch, and a neighbor was walking by and goes, hey, mister, your dog's laying on a nail. And he goes, don't worry about it. When it hurts bad enough, he'll move. And sometimes we just have to get to the point where finally it hurts bad enough. And that was the point that I was at when I was, 20 years ago and ready to have a better life for my family.
Yeah. That's a powerful story for sure. So what does prosperity mean to you at this point in your life, Darin?
Well, I've met wealthy people, had a lot of money, that were some of the most miserable people I've ever met in my life. So it's not money. To me, and for about a decade, I was very fortunate to be mentored by the late billionaire Paul J. Meyer. And Paul Meyer was a guy that at 19 got fired from 20 different jobs and had a speech impediment, and he was applying for sales jobs. And they're like, look, this is the worst career you could possibly choose. You can't even get your words out, but yet you're trying to be a salesperson. By 26, he's one of the highest paid insurance agents in the world, and had a friend that same thing, didn't look at him as how he was, how he could with this God-given potential. And what happened was he sold a life insurance policy, and the friend was with him. And at the end, the guy's life was a wreck. Even though he was very influential, he was worth a lot of money, Paul sat down with this guy and drew a wheel, and he called it the wheel of life. And he goes, listen, you want to make sure you have a round wheel. You don't have any flat spots, because that's not going to be good. If you work all the time and you sacrifice your health, that's a flat spot in your wheel, or you lose your family. And so when he left, that long story short, he ended up going, he goes, look, Paul, you sold him a life insurance policy, but then you changed his life. Paul went out and started SMI, Success Motivation Institute. So if you ever listen to John Maxwell, which I know you do, but for the people that are viewing this, you'll hear in his book a lot of times going, and by the way, I'm very blessed right now to be on an advisory council with John Maxwell. He's one of the most amazing men I've ever met in my life, people I've ever met in my life. And he'll go, the day that changed my life was someone said, what is your personal plan for growth? And I didn't have one. So he actually purchased Paul Meyer's course that set him on the path that we all know who John Maxwell is today, right? And so for me, it's not about just the money. It's about trying to have a balanced life. It's about setting goals in every aspect of my life. So I take care of my health. I'm with my family, physical, spiritual, financial, social. So it's having a balanced life, not just focusing on one thing. To me, that's what it's about.
Right. Awesome. I'm curious, do you have any morning or evening rituals?
It's funny that you say that, because in the last several months, it's been probably the most I've ever grown in my life. And there's a guy named Ed Mylett. I'm not sure if you've been following Ed Mylett, but he's definitely amazing. He's the fastest growing influencer right now on social media, but he has a podcast, and he says a lot of the things that the billionaire Paul J. Meyer said, but he actually says them in a way that's a little easier to understand and comprehend. And yes, I had a ritual, but I've really focused on it a lot more now than I ever have before, especially after listening to him. Because when you get up in the morning, I was listening to a sermon by Rick Warren, and he talked about the first 7 minutes of your day set your entire day. So when you get up and you immediately turn on Bad Morning America, right? Not Good Morning America, because they don't put the good stuff on there most of the time. If it bleeds, it leads. That first 7 minutes sets up your whole day. And so he talks about making sure you're not jumping on your phone, looking at social media, thinking about all the things that you have to do and you feel rushed and behind already. So what I've done is I've focused on, and again, it's not about arriving to a certain point because you're never there. We're either growing or declining. Maintaining is a myth. I learned that from the billionaire, Paul Meyer. So it's about every day, and this has been a fight for me. As soon as my feet hit the floor, my eyelids open, starting to think of things that I'm grateful for. Not what am I stressed about, how many things I have to do for the day, but I mean being thankful for small things. It could be water to drink, a bed to lay in, a warm shower, healthy family. Just trying to think of as many things as I can to be grateful to get in that mindset. Then what I'm doing is when I go in and I'm, getting ready to take a shower and fix my hair, right? I'll take and put it on a YouTube from me, and not everybody believes what I believe, but I'll put on some type of sermon, right? A message. Maybe it's Rick Warren or somebody like that, right? And I'll listen to that for 20, 30 minutes while I'm getting ready. Then what I'll do is I'll listen to a podcast or, audio book. So I do that in the morning because what that does, it kind of sets the pace for my entire day. Then at night, I'm learning to do the same thing, right? Being grateful, and then putting something positive in my brain, because what you listen to, what you read, what you think about before you go to sleep, you marinate on that for the next 6 to 8 hours. And your subconscious brain, and I've been really getting into this lately, the science behind, we have 75,000 thoughts on average a day. The majority of them, 91%, are subconscious. So by the time we're 35, we're pretty much a programmed robot. And there's about 9% that if we work on that 9%, we can change a massive part of our life, right? But when you have 75,000 thoughts a day, most of them are subconscious. Your subconscious brain makes more decisions than your conscious brain. So and I don't know if you've ever, I'm sure some of you may laugh because you're going, oh yeah, you listen to some crazy song on the radio, you flip in the channels, you're like, that is the stupidest song I've ever heard in my life. And you wake up in the middle of the night singing that song, right? So it just proves, or you watch a movie and you dream that you're in the movie. So to me, the morning and the night, and Ed Milet talks about, if you can control the beginning and end of your day, it's a lot easier to control what happens in the middle, right? Doesn't mean it's all going to be easy, but it definitely makes a big difference. So that's kind of been my ritual recently. And another thing too, that really cool tip, he said when you're programming your subconscious, we look at our cell phone about 400 times a day. We check our cell phone. So he talked about even putting your goals, and I'd already done that. We want a house in, Sarasota for our family to go to, Siesta Key, that area. So I actually have a picture of looking out behind one of the houses that we toured, because you check that 400 times a day, and it helps program your reticular activating system. And you can go listen to Ed Milet about that, and Dr. Joe Dispenza has some really good stuff. But that's kind of my ritual that I've really been working on recently.
I love it. That's great stuff. Has there been a book, Darin, or a gift that you find yourself giving to people over the years?
Well, I mean, all here are what I recommend. We know Think and Grow Rich, right? Study 500 of the wealthiest people in the world over 20, 30 years. And there are 13 things that you have in common. So definitely recommend that book. Then, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Those three are definitely really good books to read. But then anything John Maxwell, anything. And John Maxwell is like, it's almost like I'm getting paid to say it, and I'm not. but what I love about when I meet leaders is seeing how they are behind the scenes, not just anybody can say anything on a camera, right? Or they can put anything in a book or a podcast. But when I've been around John Maxwell and said, man, this guy lives exactly what he teaches. So anything John Maxwell, I recommend. And then Ed Milet, the new book, Max Out Your Life, right? That's my new favorite. Besides anything John Maxwell and the ones I mentioned, it's a smaller book. It's a very easy read, but every single page is packed. It's like a John Maxwell book. It's not like you start highlighting, you go, man, I'm better off what not to highlight than what to highlight, because you're highlighting everything. Just a few recommendations.
I love it. Here's a fun question for you. Has there been a purchase of $100 or less that you've made in the last 6 months that has had a positive impact on your overall quality of life?
I would say those books, the Ed Mylett book, then not to mention the podcasts are free, so you can listen to those. But yeah, the Ed Mylett, John Maxwell books, all of those has made a major impact on me because it's direct. And if you control your philosophy and your attitude, that takes care of everything else.
What's your favorite John Maxwell book?
That's almost impossible to answer. Matter of fact, he's let me show you this real quick. I've got one right now. Let me see what I did with it. I got so many books everywhere. But this is one that I'm going through right now called Put Your Dream to the Test. Mm-hmm. And 10 questions to help you see it and visualize it. Because I've learned that you have to have a crystal clear picture of where you're going. And if you don't have clarity, you don't have focus. If you don't have focus, you don't have energy. So clarity gives you focus. Focus gives you energy. And the clearer the picture of your future, the more goal-directed your actions are on a daily basis. I would recommend, like if you're saying what John Maxwell book, I would say probably start with Failing Forward was one of my favorites. Developing the Leader Within You is a really good one to start with. And then anything after that point.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Okay, let's shift the conversation a little bit more towards business, success, money. Has there been a time when you struggled with creating prosperity and abundance in your life and your thinking? And if so, how did you work through that? How did you process that, Darin?
Well, I think there's always the battle of the struggle, right? Because once you think you've arrived, that's a dangerous place to be because, we all can be humbled pretty quick. And I've been humbled before. And then, it's an emotional roller coaster. And I think it's important for people to know. John Maxwell said recently, we were at a training with him and he goes, I've never seen anyone end up at the top of a hill by accident. Right. And he goes, it's always going to be uphill. It's always going to be a battle if you're growing and you're reaching toward your full potential, which kind of leads to what the billionaire Paul Meyer said, you're growing or declining. So when you're going through the emotional roller coaster, there are times that you go, man, this is the best thing I've ever done. I'm excited. I'm jacked out of my mind. Then you go through the self-doubt phase. Is it really worth it? Should I just settle? That's why comfort zones, we were designed with comfort zones because they keep you safe, or they're designed to keep you safe. But comfort zones are never comfortable. Here's your comfort zone. Here's everything that you really want when it comes to life. So for me, when you're going through that emotional roller coaster and you're in that downturn where you're having the self-doubts, what I've had to do, one, fuel the positive, right? Like podcast, audiobooks, reading, the right people around me, block the negative. Sometimes we have to disassociate with people for a while or for good, or limit the time that we're around them, because 1 ounce of doubt, you can be out. And one negative comment is 14 times stronger than a positive. So it's, you have to think about who you're associating with. And that's a whole nother little topic here. But one thing is fuel the positive, block the negative. And the second thing is that I have to remember why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's not the money. Right. You have to put an emotional attachment to the money. That's the only thing that helps you stay strong enough, long enough, is to have a crystal clear picture. And if you read Think and Grow Rich and you study any of the most successful people, they just don't go, let me give you an example. And it's easy to use something physical, a physical object, than it is like, I want to help my church. I want to give to a charity. I want to give to, this association. But let's say you want a car. It's not easy. It's not enough to go, I like a new car. What type of car? What model? I want a Lexus. What type of Lexus? The LS 500. What color? White. What color interior? Black and red. What wheels do you want? Have you picked out the wheels? Oh yeah, I want those chrome wheels. Do you know what the payment's going to be per month? Do you know what the insurance is going to be? Do you know what options? Have you printed off the brochure on your? Do you have a screensaver on your phone, on your computer? And so you've got to get very, very clear. And the clearer the picture of your future, the more goal-directed your actions are on a daily basis. So when that happens, you go through the self-doubt. For example, like for me, when I'll give you an example. We had a big Coca-Cola plastic piggy bank. And when my daughter was small, we go, someday we'll go to Disney World. Someday, right? Because that's what my dad used to always tell us. Someday we'll do this. Someday we'll do that. Well, my dad passed away almost 9 years ago on his deathbed going, someday. Well, someday never came. And I've learned some people's some days are other people's every days. Mm-hmm. So my daughter, someday we'll go to Disney World. We're going to put our change in this piggy bank and we're going to use it for Disney World. And one day she comes in, I'm in the bedroom with it on the floor, all the change on the floor, and I'm taking quarters and nickels and dimes just to go get something to eat. And she runs out of the room crying because Daddy has taken her money for Disney World. And I remember on my knees, hands and knees, going, God, how can I get to the point I'm taking money from my kid's piggy bank? And that was the day I said, I've had it. And I went and wrote on my wall, I will until. And then someone said, Darin, you know success is buried right underneath frustration, right? And I'm like, well, I have to be close because I can't get any more frustrated. And I put that on my wall. So every time I felt like quitting, which was a lot, I tell people I used to want to quit about 100 times a day. Now I'm down to about 2 to 5. And I would rewind that why through my head. And I would go, they can quit on their family. Doesn't mean I'm quitting on mine. Right. And that helped me stay strong enough, long enough. So when you're going through the emotional roller coaster in life, and once again, Rick Warren, another thing that he says, you're either out in a storm right now, you're heading out of a storm, or you're getting ready to go into a storm. That's life. So anytime I'm going through those, that has helped me continue to push forward.
Awesome. Awesome. That's good stuff. How has failure or maybe a mistake you've made in the past, Darin, set you up for a success later on?
Oh, let's see. I've had a lot of failures, but my attitude is I don't fail, I either win or I learn. So I think that's important. There's been a lot of times I've made mistakes, whether it was, like, for example, when I ended up bankrupt, we had a guy start building us a house and he walked off the job. So I could have blamed everyone else. Man, it wasn't my fault. He did this. And I did blame for a while, but I had to finally take responsibility and go, you know what? Who hired the guy? I did, right? So we are where we are in our life because of decisions that we make, good or bad. So there's been a lot of decisions that I've made that are not great decisions, and I continue to make. But as long as you're coachable, okay, and you're open and you're going, hey, look, I may make a mistake, but what can I learn from it? I need to grow from it. And you plan, do, review. So I know you and I both heard, a rocket is off track on the way to the moon the majority of the time, but it continues to readjust. And a lot of times too, and I have to, and again, all these things are things I have to tell myself every day. It's not like you're a leader and all of a sudden you go, I've arrived. I never go through challenges. I never have self-doubt. Like, that's an everyday battle. I even heard Ed Milet. I mean, the guys, he was talking about how he was broke and him and his wife were showering in an apartment complex at the pool, and he'd have to hold up the towel while she took a shower. They didn't have water. And now he's worth $400 million. And the other day he came on and said, hey, listen, I'm just going to be transparent. I had a lot of self-doubt yesterday. Feel like, am I making a difference? Am I, is what I'm doing worth it? And I mean, this guy's worth $400 million and the number one fastest growing influencer on social media, right? And so for me, it's just it's a constant daily, battle to make the best decision I possibly can, to learn from what I don't do that I should do. And another big part of that, so I don't miss this, because I think this is huge. And here's the thing, if all of you that are watching, if you only get one thing out of each interview that Terry does, it's worth the entire time. And if you took 10 people that watched each interview and you go, what did you learn? It's going to be something different, right, from every single person, because it's where you are. And two things, associations and spaced repetition. And I know, Terry, Darin, you're going way off topic, but this is important, I think, because I know your goal with this, and I want to make sure you hit that goal. Spaced repetition is the magic ingredient that the billionaire Paul Meyer taught me. So you could watch, there's more information available. And I remember one of the top leadership coaches in the world approached Paul Meyer and said, I don't understand. And he goes, don't understand what? Why there are more people struggling with every area of their life, but yet there's more information available than ever before. You can Google anything, and there's more information you could ever read in your lifetime. Paul Meyer said they're missing the magic ingredient. And he goes, what's the magic ingredient? And Paul Meyer goes, spaced repetition. Spaced repetition. You have to rep your mind like you rep your muscles in the gym. So when you're watching this, because I know we're giving them so many little golden nuggets, over 50% of what you retain is after the 5th time you hear it, see it, or read it. So you may listen to this same interview. Like I'll take one sermon, one Ed Milet podcast, one whatever, and I will listen to it 10 or 20 times. Not in the same day, but I space it out. So for example, if you took a 15-minute interview, or a podcast, let's do it once a day for 5 days. What happens is you're going to start hearing different things every time you reread that book, or you listen to an interview, or you listen to a podcast, whatever it is. It's not that the information changes, we change. So I just want to make sure that everybody that, don't just watch the interviews that Terry's doing once. I would listen to them over and over and over. I've been listening to one recently, a 12-minute one, probably 10 times in the last week. In the morning, at night. It's about your brain and your reticular activating system. It's one that Ed Milet did. Every time I hear it, I'm like, how did I miss that before? So that's one thing. The other thing I was going to tell you, when it comes to mistakes, it's important to have your associations, the right associations. It's a proven fact that we become the average of the 5 people that we associate with the most. And their blind spots are exactly what they are. They're blind. You can't see them. So it's important when we're making these mistakes, you have people around you that can see things that you can't see. So I've been very intentional on having the right associations in my life, because they're like an elevator. They lift you up or they bring you down. And we have to ask ourselves, what are our associations doing to us, or what are they doing for us? Okay, so I thought those 2 little tips right there, when you're saying, how do you continue to go through the challenges? What are the mistakes that you make? Both of those things have helped me through all of that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Appreciate you sharing that. How important has meditation and or visualization played out for you in terms of you building the quality of life that you've created?
It's interesting you say that too, because the billionaire Paul Meyer used to say things like, we magnetize the condition that we seek. And what you focus on, you attract. And he said things that were true and they completely worked, but I didn't know why. Well, recently listening to Dr. Joe Dispenza and some different people, it's interesting that our brain does not know the difference in reality and what we tell it. So when you visualize, and I used to visualize, and I still visualize, not used to, but I always visualize, I didn't realize that your body produces the same chemicals and endorphins as if the experience actually happened. So you can experience an experience before you ever experience it. So if we move in the direction of our expectations and you're visualizing and meditating on those goals, and it's amazing how effective that is. So now that I know the why behind it, I'm even more laser focused on, during the meditation of the morning, I hired a meditation coach and paid him to do me a little guided meditation, because I got ADD, ADHD, ADT, OCD, I got them all. And so for me to go like a 10-minute meditation took me a long time to be able to focus for 10 minutes. So when I'm doing that meditation and you're visualizing that at night before I go to bed, I'm trying to go through my goals and visualize, because now, especially knowing that your brain didn't know the difference in reality and what you tell it. So very important.
Awesome. Let me ask you this question. What advice, Darin, would you give somebody who's maybe financially stuck, or perhaps they think they're too old, or they can't change their future, or they've tried to have a business and just had really no success?
Well, one, I would say you have to make sure, be careful what you listen to, what you read. So I'd be very intentional about what you're putting in your brain. Another thing, the reticular activating system is a filter. When you talk about visualization, our brain is designed to block most of the stuff out, because we were sitting there thinking about every breath that we take and every noise going on around us. It would drive us crazy. And so you have to, reticular activating system is like a filter that lets in things to serve you, whether it's good or bad. So it's like you never noticed how many cars are going down the road, like, or on the road, like the one you're driving until you purchase your car. They were there before. And another thing that I learned as well is your brain wants to be right. So if you go, well, I can't afford it, then your brain goes through all those subconscious folders, throws into your conscious brain, here are all the reasons you can't afford it. Instead of saying, how can I afford it? Asking yourself that question, the quality of questions that we ask ourselves, then your subconscious goes to work on, how can we afford it? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when you have to think about what you're thinking about, and to change that, it's what you read, it's what you listen to. Ed Milet put it in a really good way. He goes, every time you think a new thought, it's like opening up a new room in your mind, and then you start to furnish that room with your thoughts. Like it's a real thing. So your question was, tell me your question one more time.
If somebody thinks basically they're, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, too old, too young. Yeah.
Yep.
All you have to do is just research. I mean, Colonel Sanders getting told, 1,000+ times no for his recipe. What if he'd have quit? All those times. So there's so many stories out there, but you can't let that 1% doubt you're out. Don't let those negative weed seeds in there. Everybody has them. You have to fight, push, block the negative, fuel the positive, what you read, what you listen to, and who you associate with. And then you may go, well, I don't have any really good associations. Well, guess what? Most of my associations with my goals and my dreams now, it's not like I'm hanging out with them personally. It's watching them on video. It's listening to their podcasts. It's reading their books. That counts as my associations too. But then I also try to seek out the people that have the life that I want, because if we buy people's opinion, we buy their lifestyle.
Right. That kind of leads me to the next question really is, let's say somebody is moving through life. They're spinning their wheels. They don't really know who they want to become or what they want to accomplish. They just know deep down they're meant for more. What advice would you give that person?
I think it's the same thing. They got to find out something that they're passionate about. And when you find, like, what is something you would love to do even if you didn't get paid to do it? That's a good way to start trying to figure out what the heck you want to do, right? And if you're like, man, I just love kids, or I love whatever it may be, and then that's something that you could start moving in that direction. And it's not like we go, what's the thing that I look now and go, man, why did I make the decisions? I mean, I ask God to direct me and try to do the right things and go open the right doors and not go through the wrong ones. But then there have been decisions going, why the heck did I do that? And why did I go here? But now looking back, it were things doors that I had to go through to lead me where I am right now. So you're never going to feel like you're ready to start that journey. Let me just tell you that. You're never going to feel ready. That's why psychologists have proven it is easier to act your way into a feeling than feel your way into acting. That I think one of the biggest mistakes that people that I'm talking to now are making is they think that they can just continue to learn and do nothing about it. They're just going, I'm learning, well, there's a lot of educated, unhappy, broke people that are not achieving anything. Because it's not about just learning, it's about doing something with what we learn. So I would say, think about something you're passionate, get involved in that space, then just go straight into it and start doing some stuff. And you'll have doors that close and doors that open, and you'll make some mistakes. But Emerson said, do the thing, have the power. He didn't say wait for the power and go do the thing. I remember John Addison, I'm sure you remember John Addison. Yeah. He would say, act the way you want to feel, and soon you'll feel the way you act. That motion creates emotion. So that's
right. That's cool. That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, let's say somebody buys into all the stuff that you're saying, and they get all jacked out of their mind and really excited about what they want to do, and actually start maybe going down that path. And let's say they go to an event and they get, all fired up after, going to an event with Eric Worre and seeing you and lots of other people who've created massive success and prosperity. And then they get home and then they stick with it for about a week or two. But by the end of that first 30-day period, they're back into their old routine, old habits. What advice would you give to that person who wants to get out but just is stuck?
Yeah, so here's interesting that you asked that question. All right. So depending on when you're watching this interview, because that's the great thing about YouTube or wherever you put this, there'll be people watching this for a long time. And I've got a lot of YouTube videos that I did one time and they get thousands of views, a day or a week or a month or whatever. January 1st, right? Just less than 3 weeks ago. And January 17th was ditch your New Year's resolutions day. It's a thing, right? I'm like, 17 days? Like, really? Like, how many stories do you hear that inspire you? Man, they did a movie on that person because they just pushed so hard. Well, how long? 17. 17 years? No. 17 months? No. They pushed a whole 17 days. I'm like, oh my gosh. But that's a true thing, because what happens January 1st, people are like, man, I am sick and tired of being sick and tired. Today is the first day of the rest of my life. They say all the right things. We're going to go up the mountain, lock arms. You're going to find us at the top of the mountain, on the side of the road, dead on the way to the top of the mountain. And they go, the definition of insanity is doing what we've always done and expecting to get something different. This is my year. And January 17th, go into the gym January 1st. You're standing in line to get a machine. Go in there 45 days later, you can shoot a cannonball that bounces off the walls and it wouldn't hit anybody. So it's about not just doing it on emotion. Okay, it's about doing it no matter how you feel. And the way that another huge tip from the late billionaire, Paul Meyer, you will never get to where you should be in any aspect of your life without accountability. Because apathy is a natural human instinct common to us all to seek a comfort zone where nothing ever changes. And remember, comfort zones are not comfortable. They're designed to keep us safe. So for me, I go into the gym. May not look like it, but I've been working out since I'm 45. I don't feel 45. I feel like I'm in my 20s, but I've been working out since I was a teenager. I know how to work out. Why do I hire a trainer? I want him to push me beyond what I'm going to push myself. And there's a joke, because when I go in, sometimes he'll slip and go, hey, what do you want to do today? And I always say the same thing, because as soon as he says it, he starts to laugh. I want to eat a donut, drink a milkshake, and take a nap. Not work out. And I'm like, I don't pay you to do what I want to do. I pay you to push me to get the results that I want. Mm-hmm. So I would encourage you to find accountability. So spiritual, I work on having people around me hold me accountable for that. Physical, that's why I hire a personal trainer, even, nutrition plans and stuff like that from time to time. Business wise, same thing. You got to have people that are in your life that tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And a lot of times when it rubs us the wrong way, it was meant for us. Right. So that's what I would encourage you to do, is find some type of accountability, because you're only going to feel like it for a very short period of time.
That's
awesome. When you push through it, no matter how you feel, that's when you got to push into the multipliers kick in, and it's different for everyone. People go, well, how long does it take? Well, I can tell you this, the longest distance to success is a shortcut. We all have to step up to the counter and pay full retail price for success. So when you hear somebody that became an overnight, I got rich overnight, I got into this business and I put in 3 people in the business and they went to work and I've never done anything else. That's like winning the lottery, right? Most of the time there's a story behind the story. They were in another company and they struggled for a while, and then finally they had some success and they built a following, and, but find some accountability and, get in the right group of people. That'll make a big difference.
Yeah, that's huge. That's a huge part of it for sure. So, okay, let's shift the conversation to a couple of lighter subjects. Let's say you had the ability to send everybody in the world a text message tomorrow morning, Darin, on how they could create more prosperity and abundance in their life. What would your text message say?
Well, I don't know the exact wording, but I would try to get a point across. We don't make what we want, we make what we are. Mm-hmm. And if we want to make more, we have to become more. So work on you is hard or harder than you work on your business. Now, again, doesn't mean that you just do personal development and don't do anything about it. But why do most people win the lottery go broke? Not just go broke, but go back to a place worse than where they were before they won the lottery. They won the lottery because they didn't become a multimillionaire. They were given millions of dollars, and our income always comes back to where we are. Right. So if you want to make more, you have to become more. And we get paid based on the value that we bring to the marketplace. So I would say work on that, because companies come and go, opportunities come and go, but they can't take your value. As you work on you, they can't take that away from you.
Yeah. In the last 5 years, Darin, has there been a new belief or behavior that has improved your prosperity thinking and your overall quality of life?
I would say that one of the biggest light bulb moments for me was realizing that every time I go to a different level in my life, it's because I finally believed that I could.
Hmm.
So that enemy, a lot of times, is the inner me. And the way that we do that, Ed Milet says it like we're a certain degree type person. Let's say you're a 75-degree person, right? We're 75 degrees. So anytime we start getting up to about 80 degrees, we'll start cooling it back down, right? Because that's where we're comfortable. That's our comfort zone. And that's why no matter what happens in most people's life, they always barely get by, no matter what. Also, if you get too low, you get to 70 degrees, okay, you'll heat it back up. So that's your identity. That's where you feel like that's where you should be. So the way that you I had this light bulb moment way before I started listening to Ed Milet, but then when he talked about it, I'm like, that's exactly what happened. So the way that you raise your degree is you do a massive burst of activity in a short period of time, and you raise your water level, right? You just go, it's almost like ripping a Band-Aid off. It hurts if you rip it off slower. It's not as bad if you rip it off fast. So if you're going to go for something, go for it, man. Just do that blitz and explode. It's hard to walk out of the mud. You got to explode out of the mud. So that's one way you raise your identity, because you're like, whoa, I stretch myself. It's like a rubber band. You stretch it, never goes back to its original shape. So that's kind of what happens with us. That's one way. The second way is your associations. So all of a sudden, if you're a 75-degree athlete and you start, for example, I love martial arts. So let's say I'm doing jujitsu and I'm a 75-degree jujitsu person, right? I start rolling with 80-degree, 85-degree, 90-degree, 100-degree athletes. All of a sudden, just by osmosis, I'm like, whoa, they had a hard time tapping me and they had a hard time doing this. And all of a sudden you start raising your water level there as well. So every time I've gone to a different level, it's because I finally believed that I could. And the way that I believed I could, by what I was reading, what I was listening to, who I was associating with, and then doing massive activity and stretching outside my normal comfort zone.
I love it. That's powerful. Okay, here's a fun question for you. Is there an unusual habit or thing that you love?
An unusual habit? I love working out. I love martial arts. I love lifting weights. I've been in the habit of my rituals recently, of the night routine, the morning routine. I never feel like listening to that stuff, but once I do, I'm so glad that I do that. I don't guess there's anything unusual. I guess I'm pretty boring.
Yeah, I could ask your wife and we'd probably get a different response, but we'll go with that.
Now, what are some of the things that get on my nerves? That may be a whole other thing, right?
Has there been a mantra that you have repeated to yourself over the years as you've been going through this process?
I guess an affirmation that I'll tell myself a lot. Couple of them. Successful people do what unsuccessful people are not willing to do. It's almost like you have to be your own cheerleader. Right? If you wait for somebody else to come in and save you and your family, you're gonna live a long, miserable life. Nobody's coming to save you, right? If it's to be, it's up to me. Now, it doesn't mean you have to do it by yourself, but it means that you're the one that you can't change your life overnight, but I believe you can change the direction of your life overnight. So successful people do what unsuccessful people are not willing to do. And another one is that, a lot of times I'm not feeling like it. I'm like, oh man, but I will do today what others won't, to have tomorrow what others don't. And then another one is I will until. And I've continued. So those are just, 2 or 3 little things that I've said to myself over the years that have really helped change. Because you have to work on the philosophy, the filter between your ears, because it affects everything else that you do.
Yeah. Well, Darin, I just want to say thank you, man. You have shared so many pearls of wisdom here, man. I could listen to this interview 10 times, just like you said earlier, and get 20 different things each time. It's like amazing. So I want to just say thanks for being you, Darin. I've known you for a long time. I love your heart and how you show up, and you make a difference. So I just want to say thank you for that. But if somebody wants to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
All right, Terry. First of all, thank you. I appreciate you taking your time and putting this together. And you've done some amazing things yourself, and so it's an honor to be able to do this interview with you. And if anybody wants to connect with me, I would say succeedwithdarin.com is a good way. And Darin is spelled a little different, weird, I guess. Darin. So succeedwithdarin.com. You can subscribe to my newsletter. Also on that website, you can find me on YouTube. And I'm going to do more on YouTube because that's growing at a pretty rapid pace, and I haven't really done a whole lot with it. We try to send out some blog posts. All of it, at this point is free on that platform. And so if you have something that can, bring you value, I hope that it does. I look forward to connecting with you.
Well, you definitely bring a lot of value, and I've watched many of your YouTube videos over the years. So you definitely have some great training. I encourage everybody to check you out there as well. So my friend, hopefully you got some value. I know you got some value out of today's conversation with Darin. Be sure to check him out on his blog, on his website, as well as his YouTube channel. And if you want to get access to more interviews like this, just go to terrypetrovick.com/mentors. And you'll be able to access more interviews like this. Remember this, my friend, you have a choice. Make it a better than terrific day and a prosperous one, because you, yes, you absolutely deserve it. Until next time, bye-bye for now.